and they won't, everything on the list won't necessarily concern you, or you might look at the list and go, it all concerns me. But what we'd really appreciate is if you could write on the list your top 3 priorities, what are the things that are at least your top 3, because that will determine who are the guest speakers we bring in. And if we find we've got 8 people who are really gung-ho about a particular issue, we might create a little action group on that particular topic. So it's just a brainstorm list, and there's a place at the bottom where you can add more ideas if you have thought of something that's been left off the list. And it's everything from dealing with smart meters and some of those kinds of issues, through to food supply, through to, I can't even think what else is on that list, but you'll get one eventually. I think they can do our own group. So tonight's speakers, we have a double act. The double act, but both focusing on fire ants. That's kind of cool. Both focusing on the fire ants issue. Who's got fire ants on their property? Yes, okay, and the rest of us don't want either the fire ants or the poison. So we are going to hear first from Trevor Holt, and then we're going to hear from Bronwyn. Oh, there you are. Bronwyn, sharing their perspectives and their experience with the fire ant situation. And then after that, we are going to celebrate because we have carrot cake, is that right? Made by our resident chef. To celebrate our 2nd anniversary for this group, all right? So that's all. And my last little comment is I do have to advise you that tonight's presentation is for entertainment purposes only, right? And we do not endorse any of the speakers. We encourage you to do all of your own research, make all of your own decisions. You are responsible adult, grown-up men and women. And so it's all on you. Do you agree? Yeah. And if you agree, we need all hands in the air. Thank you very much. Excellent. And I will now surrender go to eat my dinner. And meanwhile, Trevor Holt, the floor is yours.
So, as is known, Trevor Holt, I've been involved in the fire ant campaign now since July last year, so a few months. I don't know if many of you know what's going on, but currently there's an eradication zone where they're prophylatically treating, which means treating regardless of whether there's fire ants or not evidence on their properties. It's a 10-kilometre strip that goes from the Gold Coast right out to Boona, Montague Valley, and right up to Caboolture. So it's 180,000 hectares in total, the eradication zone, and their goal is to treat that 6 times over the next 2 years, whether the consent of the property owner is there or not, or whether there's fire ants there or not.
Sorry, just to interrupt. I've got that video.
Yeah, and that's what, yeah. So if we can play that video.
Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, we'll just play the video. So it's, the point I want to make is, regardless of whether they want to or not, they're going to treat these properties. And here's an example that I was invited to by Dr. Danis Petco, who didn't want his property treated. In fact, he took it to the Supreme Court in 2023, and he has an undertaking, but he couldn't stop them. So it's a short 10-minute video, and it just demonstrates that regardless on your thoughts or sovereign thoughts or any thoughts on trespass laws or signage or anything like that, if it gets to this stage, they're coming onto your property and they will jump your fence and they will ignore your rights and walk over you. And this is a very good example of them actually stating that they're going to deny your basic human rights and your property rights because they consider fire ants more valuable to control than you as an individual.
So I just have to watch
No, that's right.
You found it. Alright, have to do the,
Most people don't know this, but the real reason behind Alzheimer's and dementia has less to do with age, lifestyle, or genetics. Here's the problem. No matter what type of pills you take or what treatments you try, you're only treating the symptoms. Listen up. Eventually, it's not good.
Just while that video's going. So then there's, on the inside of that horseshoe approach, what they're calling it outside in, where they're going to work their way into the coast. There's some suppression areas. So at the moment, the eradication zone is super funded with federal and joint costings on the states, and the suppression zones have got very limited funding and are left to the council to manage these fire and infestations. So there's over 1,000 people employed in the eradication zone, field teams and utes, over 200 brand new utes that they bought. They've got a base on the north side up near Wiltshire, a base down here on the Gold Coast, and one in the middle near Reagan here, where they're using to treat. So this video is at Flying Fox, a little suburb near Beachmont, and this has got the Damien Septo's property. So I'll just play that, just to give you a bit of an idea how ruthless they are.
alright. Where you can stand going.
That's right. Yeah, so at the same time that this was happening, this was on Thursday, it's only last week or the week before, I think it was that day, but there was a lady in Sanford that didn't have fire ants and didn't want them on her property. She wasn't part of our campaign, but she told them to F off, and she got arrested by the police and charged as a criminal offence for not letting them on her private property. So, just to give you some perspective, Damien didn't obstruct them. It says in the Biosecurity Act, if you have a reasonable excuse, you can obstruct the biosecurity officers, but there's no excuse that they deem as reasonable, and they won't accept any excuse regardless.
Trevor, do they have fire and stand camera?
No. Fire ants can only live, so a little bit about the ecology of fire ants. They can only live in environments that are above 24 degrees in the soil and under 35 degrees in the soil. So they cannot live in heavily treed and shaded areas. They're thermoregulated insects. So they need the sun to regulate the temperature of their brood to an ideal temperature of 30 degrees. So the program is using helicopter distribution of these toxic chemicals in these forestry areas where it's impossible to establish successful colonies of fire ants.
Do it right now. Sorry.
This is about an hour into it.
If anyone doesn't want to, just go ahead and read it.
Let's stop the
You must read that sign before you go.
mostly for us.
And if anyone says in the future they didn't read it, you know this is on you because it's very clearly in front of you. So we're just documenting this. I'm not stopping any of you here because you told me you're coming in anyway. You don't give me a choice. So long as you're all aware, I'm taking away your excuse to say you didn't know in the future. Okay? Has anyone got a problem with that? So I'm not hearing any words because we're going to instructions on the floor. We're here to treat it properly. We've been waiting here for 3 hours.
Okay, we're only one.
Give me 10 minutes.
My name is Roger Marks with Fire Security Queensland. I'm an operator officer appointed under the Fire Security Act. Okay. You can see my ID card. I'll show you that to you. So, nobody gets really breathed out on
My property, he's not letting me speak. I want all of you to know these are summonses that will be issued today.
$1.2 billion in finance, we can't get within it. Something else they should be doing.
again. So, we'll give you
You're all right.
great. So, I'll start again for the purpose of everyone's
I'm
reporting.
going to say one last thing to you. Sure. I put the shirt on for a reason. As a justice of the peace, I'm telling you guys to leave.
And if you
I'm going to
understand
say
me
it for
to
the second time. As a justice of the peace, I'm telling you guys to leave. You want me to say it a third time?
you can say it 10 times,
Okay. As a justice of the peace, I'm telling you guys to leave until these concerns are addressed. You don't have to ignore my rights.
So we acknowledge that human rights in the nature of this program are impacted properly on that's balanced against the rights of the community.
So that's no longer an excuse. You cannot say for the better of all, for the good of all, that overrides the, what they call it?
Fire security, yeah.
No, no.
So again, just to get through it, so my name's Roger Morris, Fire Security Queensland. I'm an authorised officer appointed under the Fire Security Act. You see my ID card, you being the occupier of this place statement. I'm speaking to you, to voice your concerns. As you may already be aware, the National Reservoir Fire Allocation Program is responsible for controlling the reservoir fire ants in Queensland. Our aim is to prevent the spread of fire ants and to manage the pest in areas that pose a significant fire security risk. Our activities are focused on areas within the surrounding fire ant security zone, such as Queensland. Treatment will be applied to all properties in the treatment area.
All properties in the treated area, that's the eradication zone. So there's no fire ants on this property, never have been, never will be. And he's just, because his property is in that band, in the eradication zone, he's going to get treated 3 times a year, whether he likes it, 3 or 4 times a year, whether he likes it or not. Whether there's fire ants there or not. And there's other videos.
So, no fire ants here, never has been. Under Section 261 of the Fire Security Act, authorised officers such as myself to obtain and enter places to undertake treatment to destroy fire ants.
Who did you do the right to enter in the absence of ants?
It is not. I would like to undertake treatment on your property. We only require access to the outside areas of your property. There's no need for us to enter your house buildings. The team will only be on the property for the time required to do fire ant treatment, which is probably 15-20 minutes. A lot of this size. Under the Fire Security Act, authorised officers can enter property without the consent of the occupier or owner of the place. As a courtesy, we're asking your permission to widely evidence that permission.
Legally, you want consent and permission to either, otherwise you know that.
So, we're entering your property under a prevention and control program authorised by the Chief Executive of the Department of Public Agriculture and Fisheries, now the Department of Agriculture, under the Fire Security Act 2014.
Can I ask you a question?
Just let me give you 30 seconds to get through it, David. I do not require your consent to enter the property pursuant to Section 270 of the Act. We're legally required to warn you that it is an offence under Section 326 of the Act to obstruct an authorised exercising power under the Act unless you have a reasonable excuse. The offence carries, I'll get to that. The offence carries a maximum penalty of 130 units, with the single penalty unit this financial year being $161. It's an offence to cause an obstruction unless you have a reasonable excuse, and I, being a designated officer, or my partner Matt or Phil, deem the conduct to be obstruction.
So,
Well,
how
we're-
are you?
I'm not saying that.
You just said you deemed it to be obstruction.
if that were to happen, if you let me finish. I'm informing you that it is an obstruction and you could be given a penalty infringement notice should obstructive behaviour occur.
And if harm's caused?
If harm's caused.
If harm's caused, yeah.
So they won't talk to anyone except the resident. So I'll talk a bit about that a bit later on. But you can see in this place here, it demonstrates it, but either in the video, which I didn't show,
If harm's caused,
In terms of what harm are you referring to?
as per the legal bill.
When I started doing this simple ear trick to help fight off dementia, my friends laughed at me. But when they saw how much I'd improved, they started doing it themselves. You probably...
So we're working on the permit, we're doing a legislative process, and if that was to eventuate in harm, we wouldn't be doing it.
We've told them it's harmful.
Well, harm's already happened.
So it's not subjective, and that's
You know why?
I'm just getting through this. You don't like to speak because I'm just trying to bring it to you. It's done. So we've now asked you to articulate a reasonable excuse as to why you would obstruct
The
or
last time you came here, chemicals, poison water that has been tested as your chemicals, like a load of evidence.
Yeah.
I gave the test results to you personally.
Thanks, Emma.
I emailed it to you, you said zero.
I've received no email of any test results, mate.
Well, now that I'm telling you, do you consider that a reasonable excuse that toxicity ended up in the water?
I consider that a constructive concern, and we don't take no pleasure in applying pesticides any more than necessary. Insects are in decline globally, we all know that.
Do you consider it a reasonable excuse or not?
No, because you're raising a subjectivity and you're alleging water tests that no one in the program has seen or aware
Would
of.
you like to see them today? Because this is what you said to me last time, which is also on the show.
So,
You
you've had
said
ample
you haven't
opportunity.
seen it. I've sent it all off. It's all documented, though.
Well, that being the case, the orders that have come down from my senior management have mentioned nothing in the way of hold off on that, there's a very good policy.
Does that concern you?
You're starting to get
Ask
certain
the questions. Does that concern you that I'm telling you I've sent it off to your bosses and they haven't told you?
No, it doesn't, Greg, because we act on legal information we have present in the hands to act upon, and that we do not.
It should concern you.
Oh, of course, we've got wildlife carers and former scientists and all manner of people. Everyone is concerned about the environment, which is part of their motivation for trying to stop the open spread of fire ants. However, there's no legal information or anything you're saying that would stop us from doing what we need to do. Yes, it does.
And you're saying that side is not legal. What did you say?
Will not apply to our current situation. If that were the case, you could willingly call the police to escort us off for trespass. You've had that discussion with
I've spoken to the police and they said under no circumstances will they get involved in any trespassing issues today.
Sure. So with that said, we want to get in and get out. Let's get on with your life as quickly as possible. We won't look to manipulate the gate. Just step over there. The teams are.
I will go in.
You can escort them.
There are areas that you're not to go in. So I'm warning you. That's your summons. They get sworn into that. So long as you're happy. If you want to go, it's your choice.
So we're going to go around and you can escort us.
I'll be done by this afternoon.
Sure. I believe.
It's funny, like I'm talking to the contractors and I know you're told to don't speak to them, right? But you really should speak to me and either say yes or no, because this is going to happen. Right? I'm telling you, I've been through this before, but I've not caused anyone any trouble. There's evidence of severe toxicity. You're ignoring it. Right?
I've not seen this evidence and people very.
There is evidence of it. Saying that you haven't seen it is not an excuse.
People could say anything. You need physical evidence.
And I've got it, I keep telling you that.
Okay. Well, if that
You
was
said to me last time,
and if it was verified,
pull out my phone and show you the results.
you showed me a graph, which would have been easy. So, without further ado, I think we're just going in circles and everyone get activated. Plus, people
Big one, girls.
environment.
I have multiple other excuses that I think are
Yep, do you want to articulate any of them
you're telling me anyone could have showed you the draft
So
rather
this is not necessarily my perception, but I'm going on the program is accepting of reasonable excuse and alleged water test and a photo on screen and address, with no one will be accepting any backup from that. So, without further ado, Lindsay, we're going to just go up and... did you want to...
There's also annoying the advice that you JP.
I'm not telling you to do anything wrong. I'm asking you to leave until this moment stops. And it is an offence to ignore the advice of the Just as it is.
I was going to invite them to sort of lead up there to his place. Did you want to sort of show us the areas that you're not keen on, etc., David? It's your place, or not? We'll step over. I want you to go first.
You can step over first, because I'm going to go.
What's the green there, guys?
It's all right, don't have to worry about it, throw it in the bin, this and that. and just ignore them. And then they ring me up crying and screaming when the police are cutting off their lock and their gate. And there's nothing you can do then when it's at that stage. So you want to avoid that scenario, because once it gets to that scenario, it gets very difficult to manage. The lady that got arrested at Sanford was arrested by a guy and the police that was due to treat another 4 properties, 4 of my client's properties, the previous week. And they said they were going to get police escorted onto that property as well and force chemical treatment on these properties. They didn't want it. One guy was a serviceman, an SAS worker, and he worked in intelligence for this country for over 40 years, and he's retired with post-stress traumatic disorder, which is from his service for this country. And he's got 2 kids that are 60 years old juniors, so he's a senior guy with these 2 young kids, because on one of these big courts at Thailand or whatever, he got a couple of kids or whatever. But he didn't want the treatment, and they just go and walk over him and force it onto him. So he reached out to me and asked if I could help. So I put a poster out there. I've got a database of people, names and addresses and postcodes, to see if we can get some people at their addresses the day that it was due to be treated. And we got, over that time, over the morning, there's at least 20 people there all the time, but people were coming and going, so there's probably about 50 people all up that walked over that morning. And that Tim Heenan and the police that was supposed to due to be coming didn't come that day, and none of their properties have been treated. And that was 4 weeks ago. They still haven't been treated. And yeah, so they're typically picking on unsupported, particularly women, on their own properties, because generally the husbands are off at work and the women are there by themselves during the day, and unsupported. So they could have come with the police and forced treatment without work, but they chose not to. So the only way to stop these guys is people power and try to get people and communities in different areas. So what I did is I set up what's called an Australian Advocacy Group, just a trading name of my company that I work. And I set up a database. And what I've been doing is advocating for individuals. I've got about 30 or 40 people signed up, or I send in the objections for them. So I'm representing this person, get a service agreement sent into them. They ignore it, of course, but everyone on that list hasn't been treated yet, because it just gives them another level of difficulty to manage. So what we're promoting is to be proactive in everything we do. So, and I've got a register there. I'm trying to get as many people that's interested in signing up, and they get their name, address, and postcode. And that way, if someone is getting notified that they're going to be treated and don't want to, we can get some people there to support them. And that's what we're trying to do. Because even if you got, I talked to Jimboomba, who's a vegetarian now, but he was there in 2001 when they first discovered fire ants in Australia. He was a biosecurity officer. He says they use the criminal code with police, as obstruction of police, because it's easy for them to prove that the woman didn't have a reasonable excuse. So they're not going to charge them with obstruction under the Biosecurity Act, which is a civil matter. They get the police to say, step aside so he can do his job. And then if you don't, they're going to arrest you with a criminal charge. Yeah, so they're ruthless, is what I'm saying. And the only way to get past it is to be proactive and send some communications off. And encouraging people, should they choose to, is to join AAG and get in the database, and that way we can provide, because it's such a big area from the Gold Coast to Caboolture, Boom areas. It's so hard. I can't be everywhere, but if we can get a group of people within the same area, and then we can sort of get 30 or 40 people there when the time comes and we need to be. And that's what we're trying to achieve. So my KPIs are getting objections sent back. So if anyone gets a notice sent to them, if we can send it back, and I'll set up an email called objection@aagpilot.com. If they see that, because they'll lie about the objections and the number of objections they're getting. I'm trying to get as many objections as I can to the notices. And then, because there's about 147,000 people treated in the last term, and they said about 1% was already objecting to it. They required police intervention for 1% of the population. So what they do is they try to coerce you into it. And they say, oh look, I know you don't want it, but let's just do over here and we'll tick this box and go. But then you're sort of complying and you're not objecting, and they can continue about their merry way, and that's what they do. So even though a lot of people are complying, $16,000 fines and police arrests if they don't comply. So people are being coerced into agreeing to it, and they call it doing a deal or something with them so they can continue their poisonous regime. So I'm trying to encourage people not to fall for that and to actually send in a written objection to their chemical treatment should they not wish it to be true. So that's where we're at with, that was one of my KPIs. The other KPI is to build up the advocacy group. And whether you need advocacy or not, it's just a good idea of just annoying them, sending in such and such a representative of AAG and I represent them, they have a reason to excuse to obstruct, blah, blah, blah. Just adds more volume to it. We had 3,100 people sign Parliament-sponsored petition, which was tabled on the 18th of February. I've still yet to get a response from the Minister about that. They're supposed to respond within the next few days, so by law, otherwise they wouldn't respond. But that's where we're at. I just want to show that they're ruthless. And the only way to stop them is people coming up and doing the hard work. It's not about just responding with your objection. You've got to get certified copies of your notice. So you keep your original, send a certified copy, get an objection letter signed and witnessed by a JP stamp, so you've got a copy of that. And then send them a certified copy, so you've got the original, and send it registered mail. These are the extremes that you have to do, because otherwise they'll just deny everything. You know, and we'll just lie, cheat, steal, everything. So it takes a bit of effort, takes a bit of time, but then you email it to them all as well. And if you CC an objection at AAG, then I've got a record of that objection, so they can't lie and cheat about it. So that's where we're at on that. So when it comes to treating fire ants, I've commissioned now the fire ant hot water treatment machine from Florida. It's actually licensed with the University of Florida, endorsed by Dr. Joshua King. It's a continuous hot water method. So if you've got fire ants, we can treat it without chemicals now. It's unsupported by the program and unsubsidised, so it's just a commercial operation. I try to do it at cost price for people if they've got fire ants, but it's just on a trailer or a 1,000-litre pot, and we can just make hot water to treat them. So what happens is fire ants generally are like a carrot in the ground, and they're moving their brood up and down that chamber, and it's about the size of their mound at the top. It sort of tapers in to regulate the temperature, as I said before, of the brood to 30 degrees. So it depends on how hot it is, it's how deep they are. So on a hot day, they might be close to the surface, and on a cold day, they might be close to the surface. On a hot day, they might be deeper. You know, it depends on the temperature. That's why they need to be in sun. So the hot water treatment will treat their nest, and it can be small nest would be like 5 litres of water or something like that, or 5 to 15. But mature nests could take up to 50 to 100 litres of hot water, depending on the size of the nest and the size of the colony. But in that carrot, with that moving that queen up and down that brood, there's only about 10% of the population of that colony in that nest at that time. So we're killing about 10%. So what happens? The other 90% of the ants are out foraging, doing ant business, and they will return to that mound with the queen dead and the brood gone and about 10% of workers gone. But they'll try to rebuild that nest, and then without a queen and without a brood, they'll die without a purpose. But in these heavily infested zones, queen ants, which take flight on average 13 times a year. So it's not just once a year, as you then believe. So on average, queens or sexuals will take flight 13 times a year. That's more than once a month. So during the late spring, early summer months, they're primed with the right body fat to establish their own colony. They need body fat to establish a colony. The ones that are taking flight in the cooler months haven't got that body fat to establish their own colony. So they're just wandering around waiting for opportunity. In heavy infested areas, it's quite possible that that queen could wander onto that nest that was treated, but they're rebuilding it before they die, and they will adopt her. They are a super pest, and that's one possible way of establishing a colony. So if they adopt her, then that colony will continue as before with a new queen. So that's what they do. So generally, when a queen takes flight, if it's in the late spring, early summer, in the prime positions, she will land. She normally only fly between 400 and 400 kilometres away from the nest, normally pretty close. I think 90% of them are within 400 metres of the nest. And she will normally dig within 50 metres of where she lands, normally within 10 metres of where she lands. she'll dig a hole in a chamber between 2 and 10 centimetres underground, and the chamber's sealed, so she'll seal up that chamber, so there's no access to the outside. Well, that's why sometimes the dogs won't work, they can't sense it. It's one end, and it's sealed up, and she lives off her body fat for that first period for her first workers, and they live off it. So there's a few ways she does it. Sometimes she will lay eggs that are infertile just for the minions to eat. They call them minions, they're tiny ants. The first lot are very tiny. So without the correct body fat, she's unable to establish that process. So that's why there's these queens out there that can't create their own colony but waiting for an opportunity to take out someone else's nest. So, in reality, you just got to treat that nest again. It's just a numbers game. Generally, 70% of the time that won't happen even in the infested zone. Normally you kill the nest and you never still be dead. But maybe 3 out of 10 times another queen might come in and adopt them, and you have to come back and do it again. So once you treat your property, it's good to come back in a month's time just to have another look and see where you're at. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe Ron, you can go and talk, and if you've got any questions, we'll have a question session at the end of that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, if we pass the torch to Ron tonight from Earth Food.
Well, how many of you know me? You've seen me before? Yeah.
There are a few who haven't.
Oh, okay. Hello. I'm Robin Home, and that's Earth Food. Now, this talk's, I'm going to split it into 2 parts. For those people who don't know, it's just a really quick talk about biology in the soil, microbiology and plants. And then I'm going to read you some of the things that I've got here, which is aligned with Trevor's topics. And then if we have time, I've got a recording here to talk about what is actually the permit, so that you have a clear understanding of what's what. Typically, as Trevor pointed out, there will be twisted meanings, terminologies of words in their favour. And correctly so, as Trevor mentioned, all you have to do is to be seen to be obstructing, and then you're off and away in handcuffs. Alright, so just quickly, just skirting back to Earth Food. Earth Food is 100% certified organic microbes. Now, a lot of people don't realise that microbes only live for 36 to 48 hours when they're out of their destination of their home. So it's not, their home is usually, well, it should be, a particle of soil or a cellular cell, a plant. It's not worm juice, it's not compost tea as such, it's not a sea salt product, kelp teas or anything like that. It's a boutique premium product that's been around since this process has been around since the 1880s. With my great-great-grandfather, Edgar Home, who was the senior head winemaker at Hermitage Estate Winery. Being a then ancient soil scientist, I suppose you would say in those days, he would be making from his culture this product. When you're using microbes, you have to use them straight away, as I said. We've been able to work with a soil scientist where we've got this product now is able to stay alive in its own juices for 10 years that we now know. So that product it has been in the market, been around for 30 years. The reason why I'm bringing this up in this conversation is that when we look at soil these days, I just pointed out, Trevor and I had a quick chat, there's a mound of soil out there. It's dusty and dry and crumbly and pale. It's dirt. It's not soil. It's dead. And for something to grow in it would most likely be a weed. So, the funny thing about weeds, we're always trying to get rid of it. Mother Nature brings it back. The more you try to get rid of weeds, the more weeds you get to get rid of. Is that correct? Have you seen that? That's because Mother Nature's in control. She needs those weeds to cover the dead dirt, so the dead dirt can eventually heal in time. The weeds will burst open their seeds, plant new weeds, and this is a process. So if we weren't here, if humans didn't interfere in this process, we'd have weeds everywhere, and then eventually the soil would be covered somewhat so that the debris and everything could eventually break down, and it would start like over a long period of time. I mean, we're talking like 80 years for Mother Nature to make this much soil by herself. That's a long time. So that's why permaculture and regenerative agriculture is really big. But even then, it's hard work. It's like 3 to 5 years to get that kind of thing. And we're looking at a lot of labour, plus extended amount of times, plus input and mixing and so on, and basically brewing and whatever. It's a process, and that takes so much more. The hard work's already done with the living microbes. So we put the living microbes into dead dirt, and the dead dirt can become alive from, I felt like I was in a drone. And the dead dirt with the living microbes create chocolate brown living soil in a very short period of time. It could be anything from like 4 weeks to 4 months, but the optimum time is 9 months. That's just a little bit of an introduction. I do a whole hour talk on this one topic, but we're not going to do that tonight. I just wanted to let you know that there are alternatives. Our website is yourearthfood.com, and I'm a keynote speaker in health and regenerative agriculture and food is medicine. I'm also a prolific researcher. It's my hobby. I'm not much fun, am I? But so I have articles on my website. I just published one today for you here, and I've mentioned Trevor in there as well. Because if you know me, and some of you do, you know I get pretty hot and bothered when I see things like that. I cannot help myself. That's the stuff that gets me out of bed. And I had a meeting with Senator Jared Rennick last Monday, and I was particularly keen to focus on this topic with him along with other things. But he is an amazing man. I'm not usually that impressed with politicians as a rule, because we have them coming into our workplace all the time for optics and so on, particularly with my partner Graham. And every time they walk out of there, I go, oh, well, that's done, see you later. I haven't met Rennick before. An impressive chap, let me tell you, extremely impressive. His brain was like AI on steroids. I was talking very complex conversations because I'm just about to start speaking tour right throughout South Australia for 4 weeks. I wanted to bring some topics to his attention. And of course the bioreactor was tagged onto that. He was absorbing that information like a sponge, and at the end of my long-winded chat, he sat there and he basically gave me a recap, fully intact, with details, numbers, the whole thing, for me to let me know he knew what I was talking about and what he was going to do about it. He did want to have further information, so that's when I started to dive down deep in this topic. That's a bit of an overall, thanks. I'm just going to read some of my notes. So in the article I published today, it's really just a collection of articles that have been published across a variety of media. And I've also included in that Dr. Joshua King's letter scathing letter to the Queensland government. Have you seen that? Anyone seen that? Okay, it's in that one I published today. So it's yourearthgrid.com, you go to articles, and then the section is Grow More, and that's the top one, on the top. And it's called, it'll say it's up fire ants, and the photo is little tiny fire ants, which is, like 2 mil long, generally speaking, sitting on a key, just to give a point of reference of size. That article is that letter is in the middle of that article, worth a read. And I was really keen to hear that Trevor had interaction with him and worked with him to be able to get that, what would you call that machine?
Well, he calls it an environmental friendly insect machine. There's no real thing. I like to call it like fire ant seed machine, maybe.
You need to get the steam cleaning, fire ant steam cleaner or something.
Because it's not, and this is the misconception, it's not a steam, it's 90 to 95 degrees hot water, and it's continuous. So these are some of the things, and the other thing is, because it's continuous, you're not limited to the volume, because obviously depending on soil type and depending on conditions and depending on how the soil is and how big the nest is how much volume of water you need, so it is continuous. So, and plus it's injected, it's got a custom-made probe that gets injected into the nest. So yeah, it's not like the program actually says hot water doesn't work, but they're referencing typically 3 to 5 gallons of hot water on a nest and walking away and doing nothing. So
that's the problem. When people get some information and then they go off and they think they've got it right, and in fact all they've done is created another problem. And that is this, that fire ants can create themselves a raft and they can float on water and they can just pick up and develop somewhere else. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there's some research on that. So the rafting that they talk about, a lot of the paper from the cyclone, is they do rafting and like most things probably do survive in these flood waters, but they're not going to go to areas that aren't infested. They're not going to magically go upstream and then end up where there's no fire ants. They're only going to, there obviously is an infestation in an area where they're rafting, and they're only going to raft to where the end of the water is. So they're not going to establish new areas. It's been scientifically proven that it only happens in infested areas, and it's not going to infest magically somewhere else. They're not going to swim upstream. So they're only going to the coast where they are infested.
So I'm more focused on, when Trevor and I were talking before we had a chat while you were all getting viewed in and setting chairs and everything, and one of the things that we talked about is because the soil is dry, dusty and dead, that there's 3 species of fire ants love that environment. But when it's chocolate brown fertile living soil, they don't particularly like it. So I've been using earth food living microbes in regions west of Brisbane, in a place called Pollara. It's not far from Forest Lakes as a reference, and that was working fairly well. Having spoken with Trevor, I really think, and we're going to talk more on this topic a bit later, is that using the steam machine, the water machine.
Water machine,
the jet, water jet.
Yeah. And that, fire ant seed machine, anyway. But the other thing is, it's a very unusual application in Australia, so it's not an off-the-shelf product. It's actually very unusual to have 90 to 95 degree temperature water controlled with a low flow. That's very, very unusual. So normally these machines in Australia have a pressure switch on the flow for safety purposes to go through the diesel furnace. And when you've got an open end on your nozzle, you haven't got any back pressure to enable the pressure sensor to turn on the furnace on the flow. So you have to actually swap that pressure switch out and put a flow switch on it because it's such a low flow machine, you're not building up any back pressure on that. So the problem with that setup is if you had a steam machine, which this machine is quite capable of, you can wind it up. But the problem with the steam machine is if you are creating steam and then you let go of the nozzle and it closes the outlet, then you're going to back pressure up your furnace and you're creating a bomb essentially. So they don't like to do that in Australia because of obviously safety issues. So so you need a specialised one that can't close off the flow. But yeah, so it might look like it's an off-the-shelf product. It cost me like 25 grand from the Spitfire, but we had to retrofit it out with the specifications from Dr. Joshua King to get it endorsed and licensed through the university. So it's not an off-the-shelf product that you can just go and buy. It's probably because people see it and it looks like a high-pressure application, but it's not. It's been retrofitted out in the handle that we use and the prop that we use has been specifically designed for low flow. So what we're trying to do is use the channels of the fire ants to get the water to the queen, so we're not actually blasting on, because people say, oh, you're blasting the ants and they're just going to go everywhere, but it's just not high pressure. Yeah.
So what happens with a lot of chemicals and so on is that it kills if there was soil biome there, which, you know, if it's dead and dry, it's probably not. But to put living microbes back in, to bring the soil back to living soil, to change the pH of the soil, it's the moisture of the soil. Because the funny thing about little microbes is that they aerate the soil and they make tiny nanoholes in the soil and that captures water. So that, if you have a hot day and a cool night, for example, you've actually got condensation within the soil. First, 300 millimetres is quite active in water retention. So if you have fire ants, a program could be to look at Trevor's machine, and then after that to make your dead dirt into chocolate brown fertile soil so that you've got complete healing of the soil. Soil is totally underestimated for the powers. My observation over many, many years is that as soon as we start doing manufactured applications...
Or manufactured.
Well, manufactured. Manufacture's the word. As soon as we start to get human into things, all of a sudden, human, it keeps coming up. What is this? As soon as we start getting these interruptions in Mother Nature's flow, it's always a payback system. And then we end up, it increases over time until the point where there's a disaster or a collapse or something. It's an ecosystem that operates within an ecosystem and within a bigger ecosystem. So if one of those ecosystems are dropping off, that will affect the whole thing. So now we've got problems, and here we are talking about it.
I'll just build on that point, because that when you treat a nest with the hot water system, it's going to be about a foot or so around where the hot water is, where the grass will die, or the weeds will die, or whatever's around it. So hot water does have an effect on organic stuff as well. And in fact, it's probably a good weed controller as well, because it literally kills. It grows back, it does grow back, but literally, like you say, the hot water does create that soil. And what happens is, the ants will come back and rebuild that sort of stuff. And if they don't have a queen, they'll die, like I said. But if there is a queen in that area, they get adopted or whatever. But if we treated that soil with a product, we have been looking at different products, but with a product that re-establishes that soil quickly and disturbs them returning to that nest, then that could have benefit in that as well.
So there's the article on the website, you can read that, and Joshua King's letter in there. It's actually quite lengthy, and then I've put some key points down under that. But tonight I want to bring to you the documentation that's prepared, like what you saw there, he had his little folder and he's just reading all this stuff off it. What a lot of people don't realise is the structures of law in which they've come onto your property is actually quite complex, but is there, and it seems to me that much is ignored. So, certificate and training requirements for applicators. Not once in that conversation was the certifications for the applicators presented, and they have to be.
And I confirm that was edited after an hour and a half. That's after an hour and a half standoff, that 10 minutes. It took a lot because they have to identify themselves as well. It took a lot to even get them to identify because they were scared about being identified. I chose to leave their identification out of that public video out of respect. I don't have to, but I did choose to because most of them are kids anyway, aren't they? You know, but just doing a job.
Uni students for cash.
Yeah, so it is.
So there's a competency requirement. Applicators must satisfy the competency requirements stated in the department standards, and the competency requirements is for licensed technicians, not university students. They have to be licensed and undertake pest management activities, and they do that through the Queensland Health Department. Then they need to have a permit condition according to the APVMA. That's the
regulatory
body, yeah. And they need to get a particular permit number, which is 90213. And the individuals who are applying the bait for the control of the imported fire ants must be seen to be providing a training in the proper handling and distribution of the bait of the control, and that's under the permits of that. Now, notification and compliance obligations. The pre-treatment notification, applicators are required to provide prior written or verbal notification to landholders, occupiers and adjacent properties before treatment, which Trevor's talked about. Compliance audits. Compliance officers may conduct audits to ensure adherence to the biosecurity regulations, including proper treatment, storage and record keeping practices, and that's under the fireants.org.au. So we've got 3 different websites of some very significant training requirements and certifications to be able to even be at an event like that. We've also got, I'll leave that. I'm just leaving all these things here, you guys can have a look at them later. We've also got the fumigation activities. You need a certificate 3 in asset maintenance, pest management technical, with the specialisation fumigation, and equivalent publication is necessary. So they don't show that, and they're supposed to. And I'm going to pull up this video soon so that we can give a deeper dive on that. We've also got authorisation. We have standards, manuals, and to apply chemical treatments. All of these has to be basically authorised through training and certifications under the Biosecurity Act 2014. All of that has to be provided to you if it's your land. Every time you see one of these videos, you never ever see that. They just come in, they say we're going to do this, and then you get a kerfuffle and off they go and do it anyway. Never seems to be a point where they have documentation, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you very much. The next thing is...
Can I just...
Yeah.
So these guys, these compliance officers, practice every morning, several times a day, their spiel. That's what they do. They get paid. Yeah, they got their script and they practice that script over and over and over again. And they have all the answers already prepared and what they're going to say. So the onus is on you to know what you're going to say and what you're going to do, and you have to practice your script over and over and over again on how you're going to combat and what you're going to do, because these guys making a living out of practicing this stuff, and they're very good as being demonstrated. They just lie, cheat and steal or whatever, bully their way onto their property, and if you don't know your rights or your tactics, or you don't know what you're going to do in that situation, and you haven't practiced it, then they're just going to walk over you as well. And that's a fact. You know what I mean? So they're practicing every day. It's up to you to practice as well. Yeah.
So how do they get away with the fact that it's a Biosecurity Act, so it's not a lawful entity, it's an act that
They don't
is
care about
created by the
anything.
bureaucracy?
They breach every act. They breach the Environmental Act.
The
They
acts
breach.
are not
They
in
do all
law.
that and they don't care. They literally do not care about anything except putting the poison where there are no fire ants. They don't care about putting poison where there is fire ants.
And it's interesting because they also don't wear protective clothing, because then that would tell you that it's poisonous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of this training. So you've got equipment calibration and application standards. To even see those devices they have, you actually need to have a certificate to have one to use, and you have to disclose that to the owner of the property. And that has to be calibrated to a point where that, do you notice how they're square looking? That holds 1 kilo, and it's got to be calibrated to be able to tip out at a certain rate per whatever the size of the area is going to be. It's all calculated like a mathematical exercise. And the spray mix tank it has to be set in a position so that it's calibrated with a certain kind of flow, and the volume indicator has to be clearly marked, because clearly marked means this, if this is my square pit here and it comes down here, it's got to say, it's got to be marked here for fire ants or poison 1 or poison 2 or whatever it is. You just can't have that not having anything on it. But all of those didn't have anything on it. They were just devices.
$30 a tonne. Is that the case?
Well, they have to be certified
They've
because they've got to be set up for the rate.
they've got an actual thing. When they done my property was exposed in 2019. They didn't have it back then, but now they've got a device. It's not regulated through weights and measure. As if I'm a scrap merchant and I buy scrap, my scales have to be certified to work on the weight. If I'm a fruit and vegetable seller and I'm selling by the kg, I have to have certified equipment through weights and measure.
Yep.
It's supposed to be the same with these guys. When they treated my property back in the day, they were treating it like it was grass seed. That's how much they were doing. They didn't have any contraption on. So now they're buying the Bunnings equipment, and they've got a device that they retrofit to the bottom, which is trying to do ideally about 11 granules per metre squared. So that's probably bigger. Sometimes it's a few more if they're a bit smaller granules, but that's the rate that you have. And when they done my property, which resulted in the death of 2 of my calves, it was like grass seed, like they were planting.
And that's
So,
the difference.
Bronwyn, can I just ask a question quickly? Imagine this blue area is someone's property, and that's the gate in or whatever.
Yeah.
Are you saying that these people are literally, are you both saying they're literally spraying that entire area?
So the word
Here's
spraying,
something
the word
you might
spraying,
know. By law, they're supposed to take the owner over to the nest and say, there's the nest. That's what they're supposed to do. And they're going to say, and what's supposed to happen is they say, well, there's the nest, we will start application now. And they have their little, thing that set that rate, and they'll do that area and whatever else. But the point is, they're not. They're just coming in carte blanche, do the whole lot. That kills your soil biome, your bees, your birds having problems, your snakes. Now here's something else you might want to find out. They're not supposed to go near water. That's in here. They're not allowed to go near water.
So what's near water though? What's near water?
A lake, a stream.
Yeah, but like when you say that, what is it like?
well, I think the paper is up about a metre and a half at the moment. It's methoprene's a metre and a half. I think they moved it in. It used to be quite a lot,
Yeah.
but now they don't care. The permits change nearly on a weekly basis. Whenever you complain about them breaching it, they change the wording on it. That's what they do. But the term spraying though is not. People have thought that the term spraying is in liquid, and it's a
grain.
yeah, it's a grain. Yeah, so it's a mechanical spray. Yeah. So
There's a whole heap on the side of the road where it's form of.
well, they got a handle.
On the way to number. Probably about a month or so. The applicators, everything.
Yes, so with, so the other thing that comes about with water is because by their permit laws, they're supposed to check the weather and cannot use this for at least 3 days in case it rains. So if it looks like it's going to rain on Wednesday and it's Sunday, they won't be able to do it. They'll have to wait till Friday. However, we just had a cyclone and they were doing it on the first day of the rain. Right through. They just didn't bother to stop. They just kept going. And that in itself is total ignorance of what's going on. So what also has to happen is when they do these records, they have to have the date of testing, the type of flow meter used, and the latest calibration date of the flow meter, which must be maintained. And this is all maintained in the Interstate Quarantine Department. Then we've got product-specific guidelines. Each chemical product approved for fire ant treatment comes with specific application guidelines. So an application rate, for example, certain baits may be applied at a rate not exceeding 2.5 kilos per hectare. And then they've got all the legislation that's legislated what that is. And then you've got the method of application, you've got the aerial, that's McDermott Aviation.
Or fixed wings, sometimes I've got fixed wings as well. There's fixed wings as well as
like drones.
Fixed wing, but there's drones, there's fixed wings aeroplanes, plus the helicopters.
Yeah, and we all know that's a perpetual contract, so while there's fire ants, there's a contract. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? So we've got, and ground-based, and they all must be aligned with the guidelines provided by the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority. That's the APVMA permits. Now, I'm going to leave all of this here. You guys, you know, like just, you can help yourselves to it. There's a whole bunch of things in here that you can refer to, and if you want this in a digital form, my place, Jimboomba coordinator, I'm quite happy to pass that to you.
Definitely.
I am doing part 2 to the current article on my website, which will be a more concise version of what the actual permit means. Because the language that people are using, and even that guy in that video, is not aligned. So this terminology that's in the permit, like I just quickly brushed over some of them, for example, that says where the law lies. They're changing the terminology in their narrative, speaking, and not aligning to the written law. So I'm going to put that up. Well, if I get time next week, fingers crossed I'll get that done. Anyway, if just to let you know, if you've got pen and paper and you wanted to gather evidence and you document any instances of non-compliance, including inadequate certifications, improper equipment calibration, or failure to notify stakeholders, these are some things that you can actually make note and take to another level. Consult legal, you know, if you need to seek legal professionals, or I don't know about those things these days, but the biosecurity environmental law to access the viability of the legal action, and report the breaches such as biosecurity. You can send that to Biosecurity Queensland about non-compliance to prompt regulatory action.
How many criminals, would you know, that would be in jail if they could determine if they were guilty or not. Like, honestly, like, that's what they're doing.
Does it come with a written guarantee will not cause any harm?
No, I didn't. No. And they're self-insured too, so if you do experience harm, it's very difficult to access their insurance policy because it's through the state treasury.
Okay, on this document, as I said, I'll leave it here, there's powers of authorised officers. So you've got the entry to the premises, and it explains in there about the implementation of the security program, which is what that man was trying to do. He had his script, he was rattling it off, and he was sticking to it no matter what that person said. If you notice that when the man asked the officer a question, he would just repeat his script. He wasn't actually answering the question.
And it's the same with the reasonable excuse. There's no reasonable excuse that can be presented with him on that day that's going to stop him, because he even said himself that he's there to treat. They're there to treat. There's no excuse.
Yeah, because they're all being paid wages. They're not going to go home and not get paid. As an example. General powers, so you've got general powers post-entry. So there's things that you can do. They will enter the property. They will exercise general powers, including searching any part of the place, inspecting or examining items, taking samples, and directing occupants of the property to take certain actions. So they will tell you what to do, basically. They have general powers to be able to help themselves to anything on the property. Now, all individuals and organisations are required to take responsibility and practice measures, and they include cooperating with authorised officers. And I would personally, just me being curious, I would love to know who's on the board of the directors of these agencies that keep this business model going. I think that would be a very interesting exercise for somebody to dive down deep. If I had more time, I'd be doing it. There's also penalties for non-compliance. This is interesting. Failure to comply with biosecurity obligations can result in significant penalties. Breaches against fire and control can attract fines up to, you ready? 2.2 million. According to the ABC. Recent incidents highlighting enforceable actions. We've had arrests and legal actions, and that's all been documented in various mediums of the media. And we've also got legal recourse for unauthorised and unlawful actions. And there is a judicial review that's going through at the moment, but that's not fast enough and not good enough for us. So, would you like to listen to this recording? This is, hands of those who know warrior at law, Zeph. Okay, Zeph actually is he's a warrior at law. Up the old Red Rooster. And a very interesting chap. He's a fighter. In fact, I've got children here, so I can't say my four-letter words. But he's called this the Fire Ant F. Chicory, and because I'm being recorded, we've got to have a standard. Know your rights and stand your ground. Rather nice. I'm going to see if I can get this going. Okay. Oh, don't tell me. Don't you hate tech?
While you're doing that,
Yep, go ahead.
Trevor, I didn't, that video that they showed, what part of their brains thought that not going through the gate but climbing over the fence was not trespass?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And this is the thing, I suppose, guys. You've got to let them go through their spiel as much. And I've got to take my hat off to Dave. I wouldn't be that calm if these idiots trying to do that to me. I'd be a lot more ruthless. But that lady didn't let them go through that spiel and just told them to F off, and she ended up getting arrested. You know what I mean? So you've got to try and be a little bit diplomatic, let them go through. Like, be assured, it doesn't matter what reasonable excuse you got on that day, they're not going to accept it. You've got to communicate with these guys and send in correspondence prior to that happening to avoid that. You know? The only way you can stop in that situation is if 30 of us rock up, and it's been proven, I've done it 4 times now, 30 of us rock up and say, piss off, you know, we're not treating you today, and then they piss off and they haven't come back. So, we can't,
Can we also just say, do you want to let some names from people
Yeah,
today? Can we
that's
pass
right,
around a sheet for anyone who'd like to be on that contact list?
yeah. Or I can give you just a website address and there's a contact form on there.
You can, but people often then get busy and don't get
Don't
around
do it,
to it
that's
because
right.
they're here now.
Yeah.
So if you think you'd be interested in that,
Yeah.
maybe if we sort of put
Yeah.
a piece of paper around
Can
now.
you also explain why is it called fire ants? Because this one, I just wonder where is this name coming from?
I think it's a fear money name. I think they're trying to make it out that it's going to cause that much pain. It's
Okay, but they don't cause fire in property.
No. It's just a stink. It's just a
Right.
just a stink. So they're sort of like a wasp. They've got 2 animals, and they
Yeah,
are
it's big
a
ones
wasp
also.
behaviour. So it's not just biting you; they're stinging you as well.
Okay.
And it's important to notice, Nate, as well. I'm not against many fire ants. Like it's like peanut paste. If you force fed everyone in Australia a teaspoon of peanut paste, 1.5 to 3% of the population will have adverse effects to that peanut paste. And if left untreated, some of them will die. It's the same with fire ants. It's the same with bees. It's the same with paper moth. My son will get bitten by a paper moth and die if he's not. I don't want to discredit or even minimise the effects of fire ants. If you get bitten, some people could have adverse effects to that, so it's important to acknowledge that. But prophylactically treating where there's no fire ants is causing more harm than what. And in Dr. King's actual letter, and I've spoken to him several times. In fact, he wrote that letter based on conversations with me. He didn't believe what they were doing. Is actually going to cause an environment that kills off the native ants and will increase the invasion of properties of the fire ants into their new areas because there's no competition for them. So not only are they not going to stop the fire ants, but they're creating an environment that will hasten the spread.
Yeah. But we've got 4 or 5 different kinds of ants anyway.
Yes.
What's the big deal
And
about
in
fire ants?
Australia, in Queensland, in fact, there's 3 eradication programs: the electric ant, the crazy yellow ant, and the fire ant. So these chemicals are being distributed right across the land. And in other states, it's other pests. So the biosecurity is being weaponised as like Brian says, financial institution or like a business model. And in fact, we get their meetings from their thing, and they talk about selling what they're doing to Italy, you know what I mean, and other countries so we're sort of like a proof of concept, I suppose, here in Australia. And if it works, then they're going to sell this principle of
more of a reason for them to want to make sure it looks like it works.
Some of them not eradicate termites, but just
This is not from me, but I heard this through other people who have experienced the fire ant people coming onto their property, and I think this may have been anyway. So those people are going from property to property, walking around fire ant nests, and they're driving their vehicles through fire ant nests and around properties.
I don't think they are.
Okay, so let's go with the boots then. So they're tromping fire ants from property to property that don't necessarily have fire ants. So who's controlling them?
No one. And this is the frustrating thing about it. Everything they're doing is wrong. There's no common sense in it at all. There's people screaming out for help where there are fire ants. No one's doing it. The councils are underfunded. They won't even touch private property. Councils won't do private property. They haven't got the funding to do the public spaces, and yet they're spending all this money on this 10-kilometre radius, that 10-kilometre wide horseshoe, that 90% of it doesn't have any fire ants, and all they're doing is killing off all the native ants and all the dragonflies and everything that could help stop that invasion from occurring. And the problem is too, even if left unchecked, fire ants would actually be better. At the moment, because they're at the front of an invasion, they're quite intense there. But over time, even if left alone, there's only going to be one fire ant nest per 50 to 200 square metres, you know what I mean? So eventually they'll sort themselves out and the native ants will come back and nature will find a balance, you know what I mean? Yeah. But at the moment, because it's the forefront, you're getting fire ants, lots of nests in quite dense infestations.
So guys, just in consultation with your coordinator, this video is probably going to be too long, and we've decided that I'm going to send it to, and we're going to distribute it to you from there. Hopefully I can get, I'm going to see if I can actually have this put onto our website for information as well, so that you can refer it. So I like to think that my website's like a library of resources of different topics, like GMO doesn't mix with our DNA, and there's a whole range of topics in there which you won't see anywhere. So I'll take pride in that. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Worth doing some R&D on the effects of bird food on a property that's been treated to see if that will negate the poisons.
Well, that's a good point actually, because one thing we do know is that microbes are very resilient and they actually work. Mother Nature's incredible. She just wants us to live well and for herself to be well. It's like innate in just the spirit of the life. When we work with working with end-of-life mining sites, where it's just sulfuric acid on a rock, that microbes can clean that up. Microbes can clean up diesel fuel. Microbes can be found cleaning up the Fukushima nuclear
fallout.
So they've now found microbes and fungi in there. Incredible powerhouse of repair for Mother Nature. This is Mother Nature's repair toolkit. I would love, Trevor, paying attention here, I would love to find a property where they've done the chemical work, and let's just see how the microbes can clean that up.
Yeah, so I've been talking to Southern Cross University, Nigel Andrew, trying to get, he's a senior scientific advisor, so he's an anthropologist, I think they call him both scientists, same as Dr. Joshua King. And he says there's absolutely no research done in Australia that can demonstrate that the biological effects that fire ant pose on the Australian environment exceed that of the prophylactic chemicals that they distribute. There's not even any scientific, there's not even any testing done on that. So we know that the chemicals do harm the microbes and the fungus in the environment, which has effects on ecosystems, microscopic ecosystems, which span up into marsupials and frogs and lizards and that sort of stuff. But there's been, and we do know that fire ants do pose some sort of ecological effect to nature, we know that, but there's been no scientific study done on an Australian environment to determine that fire ants has a greater impact on the environment than the chemicals that they distribute.
There's something that you were pointing alluded to there before. Are you aware of the Land Access Act?
Oh yeah, they don't care anything.
Well, the Land Access Act restricts and skews with the resources industry for any contractor or third party to come on your land. Now they've got to, by law, under the Act, they've got to provide 72-hour notice, written notice of their intent to arrive. If they don't come within that window of the agreed time frame. But the other part, there's a whole heap of things in there that make it really interesting. So to travel to the property, they've got to get weed and seed inspections and all that type of shit done. So there's no, because there were conversations there about contamination and what happened there before. So they're going to get a weed and seed certificate done on every single vehicle that are there. So it's just another, if you want to play
And these are the conversations that you can have prior
Yep.
If you're talking about that when they're there, they won't care. They're going to be there to treat. Doesn't matter what you say to them. But if you communicate that with them in a letter and send it to them, then that's going to block them up for months because they're really bad at communicating.
Because I can also give them a whole workplace health and safety, because they're playing in the Workplace Health and Safety Act with all of their certifications and everything. So to come onto my property, I can impose a workplace health and safety regime where they've got to be permitted and go under
get inducted
to my property before they set foot.
And that's the type of thing that I'm encouraging people to think about. And that's what I mean. These guys are thinking very hard, very long. They've been on it since 2001. The Invasive Species Council has set up in relation to this, and they're literally funded by pro-pesticide groups to get this stuff out there. So they've had 20 years head start on us. You know, I've only been in this campaign for 6 months, but these guys have really thought about what they're doing. So it's up to you guys to think about what you're going to do about it. You know what I mean? And that's why I set up AAG, because one-on-one, it's very hard. But 30 or 50 people, you know, brainstorming and coming up and working together through one voice is much more powerful.
Just, I've got a question. I understood you talked about this to Senator Rennick. What was his response, I wonder?
He wants to know more, so that's what
He wants to know more. He doesn't know enough.
No, see what you can understand, Senator Rennick is very careful. When he's in the Senate and he's not doing his speeches or a Senate inquiry with questions, he already has the facts, he knows them, he breathes them.
I know, I was listening to him, but I just wondered what was his response to this particular problem.
He has a working farm, he's in this area, and he's having the same problem. He's like all the rest of us. And that's why...
So you can see Senator Reddick, you can see Malcolm, what's his name?
Roberts.
And you can see Jim Wilmot, who are all senators in the next federal election. On the 22nd, I'll be speaking, Sarah will be speaking at Toowong Anzac Avenue Park. There's from 10 to 1, there'll be a free lunch there. And some music, some entertainment. There's going to be a little surprise. I'm going to surprise people with something pretty big there. But what you need to do is ambush these guys and ask them, what the hell are you doing about it? Because they're the ones in power. They're the ones who want your votes. And I know the Libertarians as well, they're quite keen. And Malcolm Roberts has spoken out of this as well. But it's not about words. It's about stopping it and getting getting our property rights and our human rights. My human rights aren't for sale. I don't know about yours, but my human rights are important to me. My property rights are important to me.
That's what comes out of it. So, well, what the fire ant people are saying, that under the having the human rights, that's pushed aside for the greater good. And someone said to me, I think it was Zed from Warrior Law, he said, well, we could say I could take one of your kidneys for the greater good, even though it's against human rights to take your kidney, but for the greater good, I can take your kidney and we can use it on someone else. That's the same kind of concept. And yeah, I think you'll really enjoy this video. It's really something. He pulls those documents apart to the point where you almost go, oh my goodness.
But yeah, it doesn't matter what law you think you break, or what trespass, or what sign you got, or whatever, any sovereign thing, or any legal thing, it doesn't matter. If they're there, they're going to jump your fence and they're going to treat. It's very important you know that. There's nothing you can say on the day that's going to stop them when it comes to that
situation. And I can tell you that even if you have a PMA, or for your protection, you can have all the PMA up to the wazoo, it won't matter a dot. Because we know people who've been bullied, that she wakes up one day, she's got this land, and she's a very smart person with PMA, and she knows her legal rights and her common law and everything else up to the wazoo. And tractors just come on in, cut her land to pieces, knock her fences over, means nothing in that minute. All you hope to have is the fact that you've got that and you can unwind it, but you'll probably need to go to court.
And that's what it's good for, is getting restitution after.
Evidence,
but preventing them is going to take a community and a lot of voices, and
That's
we've got to be
right.
heard.
The more people who start arcing up, the better it's going to be. And we've all been through situations where we wanted some overriding aspect in our community to be too stopped. We've all seen that before. We've just got to keep doing it again. So, from my point of view, I'm standing for Mother Earth. I'm employed by her. So, it's really devastating to me to see green snakes writhing around in pain at the back door for 2 days before it finally dies. See fish floating up to the surface on these lakes where they're already dead. We've got our native birds, we've got our flora and fauna, which is singularly peculiar to Australia, and the Queensland ones particularly singularly peculiar to Queensland. They're not found in anywhere else in the world, and here we are poisoning the guts out of the centre of them, just treating everything like objects. In fact, they're all living creatures, and they should have the same full protection as we do.
Well, we didn't have any during COVID, safe and effective and for the greater good. That was the exact same
It's the same
spiel, isn't it?
Visual human rights.
Makes you wonder. So the environmental social governance, the ESG, is a really big thing from the WEF, and that's coming down in droves at 100 miles an hour. One of the reasons why we're doing the big speakers talk throughout South Australia, and I'll be with Wade from Billboard Battalion for one special one with 700 farmers, is because the overreach and the interference of corporate governments and agencies down there is abominable, to the point where farmers will literally be not able to survive. They'd be lucky to make $1 in the last harvest, and the debt that they're incurring, the chemicals that they have to use because they don't know about biological botanical growing, that's like another story. And they're driven to get all these chemicals, and some farms like $750,000, and they're indebted to the big ag cartel product range manufacturers because they get to use the product and they pay at the end of harvest. Well, guess what? No one's reaching. No one can grow anywhere near like we did in the 60s and the 70s, and they're all failing miserably. And when they do finally get a bit of a crop to sell, they're undersold by something that's been imported. And if it's grown here, we don't need to import it. If it's made here, we don't need to import it. We should just be all sticking together on these topics, and that's another night. So thank you very much. I love you all, as you know.
So we will definitely, in our next newsletter, I hope you're all on our email list, to make sure on our emails as well, we'll send out links and information and all the rest of it so that we can follow up on all of this. Thanks for the names. I hope that didn't give you a big data entry job, but at least you've got the names and stuff now. We need to get to our birthday cake, but before we go, I just want to remind you that we've got on the desk table over there, corruption, whistleblower, just full of amazing information, lots and lots of really good information. And the Light newspaper. Anyone who hasn't got a copy, please just help yourself there. They're just free over there on the table. And obviously, Bronwyn and Trent will be here for another few minutes while we're finishing, if you want to speak to them directly.
If anyone wants some signs, I've got some signs. We sell these signs to raise funds for the campaign.
Yeah, we've got it in our front window.
Great signs and flyers.
Oh, I didn't bring any flyers with me, but I've just got signs.
Right.
I've got expecting
in my car, actually. There's one.
Which talks about the act. These ones here, and I've got to upload a little bit, but talks about the section 336 that they're talking about the legal excuse. But bear in mind, it doesn't matter. If you're not proactive, it doesn't matter. You know, like I said, you can write in about your land and about your occupational thing and do that in advance proactively, but on the day, that's not going to